Has Sonos betrayed its user base, dropping support for older speakers? And what will online privacy look like in the 2020s?
Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market.
Welcome to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and despite what Adam might have told you last week, I'm not turning this week's show into an all Doctor Who extravaganza. Well, not mostly anyway. But Adam's absence leaves me without a co-host, so I thought ahead and ordered one from Amazon. The shipping was pretty painful, mostly for him, I suspect, and the parcel's been sitting in my driveway all afternoon, so it's time to tear off the sticky tape to reveal Leigh Stark from Picker. Leigh, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nanu Nanu.
You survived Amazon's shipping. I'm impressed. I'm also impressed that it arrived, Australia's couriers being what they are.
Look, it was really hot in that box, and a couple air holes would have gone a long way, but I had plenty of packing styrofoam, that corn stuff to chew on, so I'm okay, I'm good.
Look, the air holes cost extra, man. We're working on a budget.
Yeah, but they make it go so much faster.
First up this week is Samsung, and they've got a Galaxy Unpacked event coming up on the 11th in the States, so that'll be the early hours of the 12th here in Australia, where they're expected to launch the Galaxy S20. And there was a time, of course, when new phone launches were a bit of a mystery. You never quite knew what was coming, but that's not really the case for this latest Galaxy generation, is it, Leigh?
No, we're so used to seeing leaks that there's really nothing to be surprised about. I think the only thing that we'll be surprised about is if Samsung actually announces another foldable, and the foldable, I guess, is ready off the bat. But one of the big stories here is there's probably the camera side of things. That's where the majority of development has been. We don't know what it's going to be, but we have a pretty strong idea because of that Samsung Xiaomi phone collaboration or camera collaboration from last year with a 108 megapixel camera.
Yeah, so I mean, a leaked purported spec sheet, and obviously Samsung hasn't confirmed any of this, but a leaked spec sheet suggests that the top end phone, which is currently being suggested will be called the S20 Ultra, will have that 108 megapixel primary lens, a 48 megapixel telephoto lens, and an ultra wide lens. It's on paper, that's a pretty potent combination.
Yeah, and that's at a minimum. I mean, you can probably, when you stack up the amount of megapixels that will probably be in this thing from both the back and the front, you can almost bet that they're, aside for tying in the S20 name, because what it should technically be the S11, but they'll tie it in for the year 2020. You can almost imagine that some marketing will sit around the fact that this will have roughly 200 megapixels worth of stuff to work with.
Yeah, now it's not a megapixel count game though, and whilst it might be able to take a 108 megapixel photo, that's not likely to be what they're actually using that primary sensor for, is it?
No, it's well the way it was set up on the Xiaomi when it was released late last year was that if I recall, you were technically taking a 27 megapixel camera, but it was combining what was essentially I think it was four times the amount in there for so you were getting a 27 megapixel image with roughly four times the quality ish. The Xiaomi used it first, and um, the results weren't bad. Like they were impressive for a first run device, especially since cameras aren't really Xiaomi's big forte. But the thing is that Samsung's cameras have been getting a lot better. They didn't really hold a candle last year to either Huawei or Apple, which mostly led the pack. But given the fact that Samsung has made a lot of developments over time on its color processing, on its image processing as a whole, you can almost bet that the Samsung version of that collaboration will be a better result altogether. That's the hope anyway. And the other thing I'm hearing is that because there'll be several models of this, just like there were this year, there's the possibility for a time of flight sensor to be, I guess, used properly. You saw it in the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, and it was there in the 5G version of the Galaxy S10. But it's basically a sensor that detects depth better than just a standard, I guess, 5 megapixel depth camera normally does on dual or triple lens cameras. And I guess the one I'd cite for showing just how well that works is the Huawei P30 Pro, which used that when it was released in March last year and still has some of the best depth controlling in a smartphone to date.
Yeah, you've got to think that Samsung's really gunning for Huawei with this phone, although of course they have the advantage of still having full Google. The other detail that spec sheet suggests, the leaked spec sheet, is that the S20 Ultra will push it up to a possible 100 times digital zoom, and we saw 50
Yeah.
times on the P30 Pro, and like it's a nice number, but the
It
actual
means
effectiveness of that zoom was not great.
no, it means nothing. I mean, look, it's like back to the old camcorder days where we used to comment on, oh wow, 400 digital zoom means nothing. Blowing up pixels is handy. It's a cute inclusion. It's really nice to say, yay, we can get moonshots from a phone, and I guess privacy. Or people who like to argue for privacy go, oh, you can get really close. You can, but the quality is so bad that it doesn't matter if you do. It's blowing up an image. It doesn't work very well. 100x digital zoom doesn't mean much, but if they can, like the 5x optical that we saw out of Oppo and Huawei last year, and the 10x hybrid where they combine the largest sensor with the optical zoom, that's somewhat useful. Still not amazing, but somewhat useful. Going up to 100x digital doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. To be honest, the thing I'm hopeful mostly out of the new Galaxy is just better battery life, because it's something Samsung has been struggling with for pretty much the longest time. There aren't many Galaxy models outside of the Note that push into a day and a half, and I guess it's a bugbear and a real pain point for Samsung's phones.
Yeah, and again, going back to that spec sheet, they're looking at, I think it's 4,000 for the S20, 4.5 for the S20 Plus, and then 5,000 for the S20 Ultra, which actually be the largest battery that Samsung's put into a phone. I guess they're still a little nervous following what happened with the Note 7, though.
Understandably, too. I mean, the Note 7 was a problem. For those who don't remember, it was a phone that kind of blew up because of the battery. Not many blew up, but enough did to stoke fears, I guess. And sorry to use the term. But the thing is that the screen on Samsung's phones is so high resolution that putting in that big battery almost certainly it doesn't give you the same sort of benefit as what we see in Huawei's phones, where you get a large battery but a slightly lower resolution screen, and that in turn, aside for some operation system tweaks, helps to push the battery life into the second day. And that's something Samsung does struggle with. You have to hope in the S20 that the phone variants are going to be a lot better with battery life, and we won't know until we play with it, which I guess won't be till my gut feeling is right before Mobile World Congress, we might get them, because it's typical for Samsung lately to announce something and to have a release really close behind.
I have read some rumors, some reports that actually they might hold off till mid March for actual physical launch. That doesn't necessarily mean there won't be review samples out there for us to play with. But you mentioned the models, and as they have done for years, we're going to see two models of the S20 family, the Qualcomm based one and then the ones that are based on Samsung's own Exynos silicon. Those are the ones we'll probably see in Australia.
Yeah,
And like you, I'm going to be really curious to see where the differences lie there, because last year, and typically, the Exynos models weren't quite as fast, but they had better battery life. Last year, that almost seemed to reverse itself. The only Qualcomm one that we saw here was the Galaxy Fold, and whilst it was horrendously expensive, its battery life was actually pretty decent for what it was.
really much. It really
Whereas
was. Yeah.
The Exynos models were pretty disappointing in that comparative space against what everyone else was doing. Hopefully, with a smaller build process and a more refined Exynos, we might see a better result there. I'm certainly hopeful that's the case.
Yep. I definitely agree.
The other detail, though, that has come out, and again, none of this is confirmed, so we're kind of spitballing here, but the other details that come out is that Samsung may be looking to push its prices upwards. With
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the entry level S20, I think is suggested it'll launch somewhere around 12 to 1300 here.
Wow.
S20 Plus 15 to 17, and 2 grand or more for the S20 Ultra. Now, Samsung sort of played in those spaces before, but usually only with their kind of slightly ridiculous 1 terabyte storage phones and things like that.
I once heard an argument that said the only way to compete with Apple was to show how high quality you were and play with the same price as they do. And I understand aspects of that logic, but by the same token, Samsung's not Apple. It does some things better than Apple, and Apple does some things better than Samsung. But even when, like, many of us are kind of frustrated and concerned that Apple's prices are on the extreme, like $2,500 is a lot of money for a phone. And for Samsung to be pushing into that territory, especially when, granted, this is all rumor and speculation, but for Samsung to even, I guess, consider being pushed into that territory, especially when people aren't buying or upgrading their phones as often, and when mid-range is such a compelling area, it doesn't seem a incredibly smart move. A part of me, actually most of me, would go, I would really find a Samsung Galaxy S20 more compelling if it did undercut the competition, not even aggressively, just enough to say that this is better and it's less expensive. It's a really good move if they did it. That's the sort of thing that Oppo pulls off. It's the sort of thing we see from Huawei before the Google issues. For Samsung to suddenly leap ahead and charge similar pricing to Apple, it's risky. It certainly leaves the company as premium. There's no doubt about it. But the mid-range area, when you've got devices like the Pixel 3a, which this year will be a Pixel 4a, when you've got so many great models coming out that actually go well under the $1,000 price, I don't know if it's a smart idea at all, but it
Well,
wouldn't
that includes
surprise me.
models from Samsung. I mean, their own A series phones are pretty darn good for what they are. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know that I disagree with you there. I guess we'll have to wait and see. As I said, the Galaxy Unpacked event is, well, for Australian timing, the early hours of February the 12th.
Yep.
So, Lee, Sonos as a brand is one that has had many very passionate fans, but right now, an awful lot of those fans, especially the old school fans, are not happy. Why?
Okay, so sound is fun. When you buy a speaker, typically it doesn't die. The fun thing about speaker technology is you can hold it for 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years, and it will still be as good as it kind of ever was. You just kind of plug it into an amp and hope the best. A lot of, okay, Sonos was the creator of multi-room technology. Well, not the creator, but the practical creator. They're the ones that pioneered the idea of sound in multiple rooms that's synchronized. And they did this through some early technology called zone players. They all had that basically plugged into amplifiers and speakers and allowed you to do this with networked sound systems. And they've been working since roughly 2006. It's an old piece of technology, but it's been upgraded over time. Throughout that time, they've also had speakers. They had a Play 5, which was a fantastic speaker for a long time. And they've even had devices that connect to record players to let you get that same sense. And from May 20, so these devices are going to be classed as legacy devices in the Sonos system and no longer upgraded. And I guess that's not a major problem. There are a lot of people who would say, okay, well, 5 to 15 years. It's a long time for it's a long time for a speaker to actually be generated. But I was going to be generated to be updated rather. But the problem now is that not only are they not going to be updated in the Sonos system, when a device in your system is out of date, it stalls the setup process. So let's say you have modern Sonos speakers all throughout your house, but in one room of your home you have one of these older devices that's still going strong, that's still great in many ways. Sonos will actually kind of stall your setup. You won't be able to get updates for the rest of your network. You won't be able to do a whole bunch of other stuff.
Ouch.
It's a flawed situation that a lot of people are, I guess, struggling to deal with because it's kind of look. It didn't come out of left field. There were some warnings given the fact that Sonos has introduced what's called a trade up program and a recycle mode, which we'll get to in a moment. But the problem was a lot of this technology still works perfectly well. As I said, speaker technology, sound technology takes a lot of a beating. Like it just doesn't die. I've still got old Sonos equipment around the house, and I know people who back in 2006 when they bought this spent a lot of money on it and still have it going strong, and that's because it was well built, really well designed, and it's just continuing. So for Sonos to suddenly say, "Well, you can keep these things, but they won't," they'll basically stall your entire Sonos system. That's a problem. Sonos's reason on
So when
this,
you hang on a
yeah,
second, Lee. When you say stall, because I thought I had an understand. I thought I had a handle on this, and maybe I don't. When you say stall, do you mean if I've got one of these speakers, suddenly nothing works, or just I don't get the new updates, the new patches across my whole system? Because I thought it was just the case of you're not going to get new updates. Are you
You
saying
no
if
no
you've got one of these
no
things, your whole system's dead?
no no no. It's you don't get the new updates, but the problem is you don't get any updates from that point. Your setup is essentially stalled as of May 2020 because you have other devices that it can't update. The Sonos system logic is that at the time when an update is released, it has to update every speaker, every device in the Sonos system around you. Otherwise, it won't work. Even if you've got a mesh networking bridge, it has to update that as well with it. I mean, that's one of the devices that's also being legacied in this program. There's a bridge part called literally a mesh bridge called the bridge, and they released an update to it a few years ago called the Boost. But basically, anyone who's got several of these bridges now has to either move on to something else or their mesh network is stalled. So it doesn't mean the Sonos won't work, but it does mean any updates moving along won't work. And the reason why stalling is actually a critical thing in the Sonos system, when you can't get those updates, it also kind of grays out in the Sonos app a whole bunch of other features. So typically, if you're waiting to install a patch, like even if you just a patch rolls out and you're like, oh, I'll install it later, things like your alarms and your services, the app menus for those are grayed out, so you can't touch them until you update. Okay, so on the one hand, yes, you still get your Sonos network to work, but on the other hand, some things may not work until you remove those components.
Well, speaking of removing those components, could you, in theory, isolate them? Will a Sonos system accept the idea of saying, right, I'll factory reset the Play 5 or my older stuff and have one? And I know this is not sort of the point, but I guess this is one way that a dedicated Sonos user could have both. The new stuff updating is one Sonos system, the old stuff sitting there working with, I guess, at least your local network discovery, maybe a few music streaming services if you like.
So not that I've seen, no, and that's because the mesh networking system still has to connect to your wireless network. You've got two ways of setting up a Sonos. You've got one that can be a wireless network that's its own mesh networking system that each speaker has a mesh networking repeater basically in it, and the second one is to just latch it onto your wireless network. But either way, it's still connected to your wireless network in some way, and so. While it's theoretically true that you could you would probably have to be in a different part of your house. Like if you're one of those people that lives in a ton of land and you have a mesh network in one side of the house and the other side, so far away from everything because you have to run a wireless network. Basically, if you live in Potts Point, that what you're talking about is actually possible. But if you don't live in Potts Point, probably not.
Okay, now you mentioned a trade up program. So Sonos is going to give me lots and lots and lots of money for my old Sonos gear, right?
Yeah, I wish. So how this works is if you have a device that's being shuttered, um, they will offer you a 30% discount credit, roughly. It's basically a 30% discount to move to something else. So theoretically, the one I mentioned before, if you have a bridge and that's being discontinued, you can pay or you get a 30% discount on a boost to move to that device. What happens when you take this program, by the way, it's only if you buy it from Sonos's website. So you are effectively buying it from sonos.com.au or sonos.com. You're not buying it with like you're buying it at RRP value, which may or may not be as good as what you can find at your local electronics store. Where this gets flawed is that there are a lot of people who are sitting there. What if I just wanted to give this to someone else because I'm obviously getting a new one? Well, you can't. If you go through the recycling, the trade up program, what actually happens is Sonos puts the device into what's called recycle mode. Recycle mode deletes your information off it. The idea is it kind of makes it sanitizes your hardware. It clears it out, but it also bricks it. The point of this is so that you will recycle the hardware and it won't get used again. And on the one hand, I actually understand part of the logic here. If it's not going to work in the system, discontinuing it kind of makes sense. But on the other hand, it's it's kind of a waste, especially when it is still
It's
possible for the
absolutely a
device to be
waste.
used.
If I understand you correctly, if I have one of these older Sonos speakers, and I actually don't, but if I had one of these older Sonos speakers, I can't actually just do what we'd usually deem a factory reset on it, and hand
No,
it off to my in-laws or something like that.
it's completely bricked. It's almost as if your
But there's no
intention.
software to do that. The factory reset is just a please brick my device.
Basically, yeah, that's what the recycling program does. It bricks your device so that you can drop it off at e-waste or send it back to Sonos at their expense. But the idea being that once you have traded up, your device is therefore bricked and we'll send you a new speaker. That's literally what they're talking about. The frustrating part about the bricking is that there are devices that actually affect, I guess, people with home theater amps, because some devices of these are still perfectly valid. The Connect amp is a good example. You need that to make your Onkyo or Pioneer amp work, and it's kind of a waste. More that Sonos telling people automatically they have to update even when this thing still works and these amps still rely on it. It's Let me put it this way: Sonos could have handled this a lot better.
So, like, online privacy was a huge topic in 2019. It looks like it's going to be a big one in 2020. I recently came across an article originally published in the Times in the UK, where, chatting to an ex Google designer, a guy called Tristan Harris, who argues that we're becoming dehumanized by our technology because it's taking too much of our attention, eroding trust in news sources, so we can no longer tell what's fake news, what's real news. Now, to those of us, in the tech space, this is in some ways not exactly news, but I guess it's news once the mainstream media starts paying attention to it.
Absolutely, it is a problem. I'm not sure it's a problem that can be easily fixed. Technology is, I guess, it's such a direct part of our lives. The fact that we actually do lean too much on it. I know that companies like Google and Apple, they're probably the better at it, are trying to wean us off it, not wean us off it, but lessen our impact on it because we do have the screen time sort of functionality that's supposed to give us a better gadget slash life balance. But I'm not quite sure it does quite the same sort of thing. And we are so used to passing our data off to someone else in exchange for something free. Email, I mean, the Gmail logic is the one that always comes to mind, whereby free email equals advertising data and a gold mine of user information for search giants.
See, you say we're so used to it. Every single time I bring this up, and I did a couple of radio interviews around this topic this week. Every single time I bring this up and I point out to people, these services that you think of as free, they're not free. You are paying for them with your data and they're keeping that data forever.
Mm.
People are still kind of shocked. They're still kind of surprised. So I guess the healthy side of this is getting that discussion rolling. I'm not sure I'm 100% comfortable, though, with the idea of just leaving it to these wellness apps because that pushes it entirely onto the individual. And whilst I think there's an individual role to play here, we could all look at our phones a little bit less or change the way our notifications or home screens work to help with that. I think there's a certain amount of weight that, and this is certainly Harris's argument, there's a certain amount of weight that should be actually pushed back onto the Googles, the Facebooks, and Apple, to name but a few, in terms of the way they design these products, and even then further on from that, a regulatory approach to actually make it a bit more apparent, especially as we come into the new decade.
I mean, it's all fraught with risk. Regulation often comes at a great expense. My health record, really interesting, would be like that. That would be an approach on that one where government regulation didn't even know how to regulate itself to a degree. But you're absolutely right that the companies who are designing these sorts of things should be more aware, or at least taking more of an active stance. The problem is, um, it's not an ethics thing for them. It's all about making money, and often that, I don't like using this word anymore, but often that trumps everything else.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. It's totally, well, it's certainly to do with their revenue bottom line. At the same time, you talk to a lot of designers, you talk to a lot of kind of in house Silicon Valley tech people. A lot of them are quite idealistic. A lot of them hold fairly kind of, nice ideas about what technology can be and can do. And we've certainly seen on and off from some of the bigger players in these companies and some of the bigger names, the odd rumble towards, yeah, actually we probably should do more. But it is that kind of, it's that carrot and stick thing of, is it down to the companies or is it down to that government regulation thing? Or is it down, again, I guess, to us as individuals, maybe not to give so much of that information away, or to argue with politicians and the like to say, well, actually, we do need rules and regs on how transparent all this stuff is, because some of this stuff can work. You look at the whole EU right to be forgotten thing.
Yeah,
Google obeys that. It doesn't want to, but it does.
absolutely. I was going to actually say in a second that GDPR has actually made a massive a dent on this thing. The very fact that you can actually stop Google, stop Apple from actually tracking you is a big deal. It's something that's worked, and you see it from even analytics states when we're looking at website information, you can't actually track it. That's fantastic. It's good that you can do that, but if you have a Gmail account, chances are Google still got that information anyway. It's just getting it through a slightly different a different method.
Yeah, I think the way a lot of Australians actually hit that kind of stuff is if you travel to Europe and look up almost anything online, you're hit with so many more disclaimers
Mm,
because again, sites are legally obliged to do that. I think, and I keep coming back to this point. I think anything that shines a light on what these companies are doing and make people more aware and more thoughtful about what they do is a good thing in the main. Although the kind of ex historian side of me finds it quite fascinating because I think there's more data about who we are as a species right now than there ever has been before. And, 50, 100 years in the future, presuming humanity is still around and can breathe,
presumably.
there's going to be this rather interesting treasure trove of detail on people, you and me probably,
Yep.
no longer here, that could, in fact, be incredibly valuable. Not just in that advertising and marketing and selling a soap sense as it is right now. Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Leigh for once again jumping into the co host's chair.
There wasn't nearly enough Doctor Who stuff on this chair, but I'm expecting it next time.
Look, I'll see what I can do. I'll try and make the next Amazon box bigger on the inside, okay?
Okay, this is like a TARDIS chair, right?
Exactly. Now,
Cool.
look,
Well, thanks for having me then.
if folks in the meantime want to check out your work or catch up with you on social media, how can they do that?
You can find me at picker.com.au or on Twitter at Lilo.
And of course, you can catch up with us on Twitter at Vertical Hold AU or by searching on Facebook for the Vertical Hold podcast. Now, thanks everyone for listening. As Adam always says, thanks for your shout outs, feedback, and reviews. Keep them coming.
Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market.
I know that Nanu Nanu's not Doctor Who.